I'm Jess. Welcome to the Rochester Press Box from McGregor's.
The Rochester Press Box is brought to you by McGregor's Grill and Tap Room, now with 6 locations, including the newest at East and Alexander, featuring in-house catering for parties. McGregor's, a beer lover's paradise. Hello everyone, welcome to the Rochester Press Box here from McGregor's downtown, East and Alexander. Bill Pucko with you. At the end, Brian Mazurowski, Classic Wolf Media, the high school sports beat, Mike Catalana, 13 WHAM TV, and we have Dan Moriarty joining us from Clear Channel News and Sports. Thank you very much. All right, guys. Hey, big news. Doug Marrone was hired as the new football coach for the Buffalo Bills. In a way, coming over from Syracuse is like cheating Peter to pay Paul, that's how I'd put it. You're big Syracuse guys, Danny. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. This move is now growing on me. Originally, it was more, because I am a Syracuse guy and I'm a big Notre Dame fan, but I also root for Syracuse being the local team. And he's done such a great job turning that program around. I mean, that program was absolutely dead. Greg Robinson buried that program. He's done a great job the last 4 years turning that thing around. I think he's a good coach. I was hoping that he would see it through. Yeah. But I think the Buffalo Bills got themselves a good coach, so this move is growing on me. But originally I was like, I was hoping he'd stay at Syracuse just a little bit longer just to make sure, especially moving to the ACC next year.
It's so funny because these are the two football teams we care about the most, and it's one for the other, you know?
Yeah, can you imagine a few years ago trying to go from Syracuse and get some help? Like Danny mentioned, Greg Robinson, the biggest disaster ever in Orange. I mean, he was awful. I like Marrone. I like what I've heard of him so far, and I like the fact that the Bills, for once, have been decisive, have been different, have been energized. Now, could it fail? Absolutely it could fail. The safer pick's a guy like Lovie Smith, and I think they could have gotten him. And I think Lovie Smith can work, absolutely. He's a good football coach. But I like the fact they're going a little different. Certainly younger, certainly more energized. I like it.
I like the move for all those reasons you just mentioned. The one thing that kind of gets me now is, so they bring in his offensive coordinator, and Ryan Nassib is shooting up the draft charts. I don't need another head coach who's married to a quarterback. I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to be the case, but if they do draft Nassib, I think it could easily happen.
You know, is there a way of measuring to this point does Buffalo gain more than Syracuse loses in this trade?
Well, that I think we're going to find out. I think that's down the road. I think right now Syracuse has to lose. I mean, I know Schaefer's taken over the defensive coordinator, and they're going to have that, continuity like the Bills like to talk about. But I think initially you're talking about a guy who's been a really good college coach, gotten that team up there. But what he does with the Bills is a total guess at the moment. You know,
Brian brought up Nassib, and you're the first guy that I remember saying anything about Nassib's viability as a professional quarterback. Is that possible?
Oh, it's absolutely possible. In fact, I went back and I was listening to some of the things Nate Hackett was saying about Nassib after the Pinstripe Bowl game. And they were asking, what about his NFL future? Now, at that moment, nobody's really thinking Doug Marrone's going to Buffalo and you're going to be there. And he gushed about his toughness, his energy. He'll make it work in the NFL. And I don't know if he would say that now that he's in Buffalo, because now you're commenting on a guy they might pick, but I think there's a very real possibility.
How good is Ryan Nassib?
I think he's a good player. I think he's got upside. The one thing that bothers me, and I know a lot of people bring this up, he doesn't have a whole lot of touch on his ball. Everything's the fastball with Ryan Nassib, and maybe that's something that can be improved upon, although the coach that will be there coaching him is the same coach that's been coaching him at Syracuse, so you think that would be something that would have changed. I think he's a good player. He's probably going to be drafted at the very least in the second round, and now we're hearing possibly in the first round.
Well, at this point, to me, the question is Ryan Nassib, can he be Andy Dalton? Can the Bills mimic the Cincinnati Bengals? Can they just get in the playoffs? That's all you need, right? Can they just get in the playoffs for once?
Yeah.
13 years says no.
But if they're talking about drafting Ryan Nassib somewhere in the first or second round, you're thinking that he's going to be the big-time guy. So we'll see what happens, but I think it is all pointing in that direction.
It's an interesting dynamic, certainly. Well, when we return, hockey returns.
Hi, I'm Emily, and you're watching the Rochester Press Box from McGregor's.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box here from McGregor's downtown. Brian, Mike, Danny, with me. I'm Bill Pucko. We're getting hockey back, Brian. I know this is great news for you. What was accomplished, if anything, with this NHL lockout?
I'm super excited for hockey, first off, but I think that a couple things were accomplished. I think the owners and the players did get a deal that kind of suits them both. I think the players got the best deal they're going to get, and the owners, well, they're always going to win no matter what. And 8 years for the fans, at least you know that you won't have to put up with another lockout in the foreseeable future. But other than that, what was gained? Not much. I think when you look at the last time that the league lost the entire season, a lot changed in the game. When the league came back, it was a brand new league. Things were fast, things were exciting. What's really going to change this time around when they come back on the ice? I really don't think anything will.
I always felt, that it was just like we're just biding our time. It's going to happen, it's going to happen.
It's different than the other sports. Hockey has very loyal fans, and I think those loyal fans are coming back. They love the NHL. They're coming back. They might be mad. They might be mad at the owners. There's a couple of Flyers guys at a Sixers game the other day. Got a standing ovation. I mean, they're excited. They want them back. But at the same time, they wasted everybody's time. I think they hurt the people, those loyal fans, by not giving them hockey. But a few weeks into it, everybody will be fine.
We've been through this with all the different sports. And initially it was, the fans will be upset, they'll never come back, and it's never happened. I think we don't even talk about the fact that the fans are just viewing this as part of life now.
Well, and like Mike just said, I think hockey fans are a little bit different because they're so loyal. We saw them come back the last time. I mean, they've been through this before with Gary Bettman as the commissioner, obviously. Every single time that a CBA comes up, there's some sort of work stoppage, and they always come back. And I think the real winner here is the hockey fan because they get hockey back. I know my friends who are big hockey fans, they've been staying up till 4 a.m. to watch the U.S. and Canada and the World Juniors. And I mean, they just crave hockey. They live and breathe hockey. And now that hockey's back, I think the fans will come back.
I think that is the big difference, though. The fans will be back, but the fans really aren't getting much of anything. I think you're going to realize it when that first snoozer of a game comes on, whereas after the last lockout, it seemed like every game was great.
Yeah.
Every game on TV was great, the way the games were being called, the way the games were being played. And
why will that be different? I remember I liked that 50-game season.
Last time they changed a whole lot of the rules, and that hasn't come at all for this. We won't see any major rule changes as far as I know for this year.
Boy, it does hurt the Amherst, though. I mean, I know it hurts every AHL team, but man, Foligno, Hodson, TJ Brennan, where they're still in the process of working that out. They lose some exciting players that fans have enjoyed to see. They knew those guys were eventually going there, but it's a fun Amherst team.
I've been kicking myself and not seeing that team play enough, knowing that this date would come and that the team wouldn't be the same.
Yep.
Now those players have the advantage of they've been at least playing.
Yep.
Injuries, how much are they going to be a concern? Like last year's NBA lockout, did players expect the season to now come back?
Yeah, it is going to be super interesting to watch how that folds out when you have a schedule of you're playing every other day to see, well, does it help or hurt you that you've been playing this long? Are you going to run out of gas at the end of the season? Will the fresh guys be better toward the end? There's a lot of that kind of stuff that comes into play that is going to be super interesting.
Some coaches may go Popovich on them and sit guys, let them rest, right? Take some games and say they're just going to rest.
We all determined here weeks ago that made perfect sense to us.
Yeah.
When we return, like it or not.
Hi, I'm Alexa. You're watching the Rochester Press Box from McGregor's.
This portion of the Rochester Press Box is brought to you by Sticky Lips Barbecue, featuring the All-American Menu and the Atomic Bomb Challenge. Sticky Lips on Culver Road across from East High and the Juke Joint on Jefferson. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box here from McGregor's Downtown. We'd like certainly to wish John DiTullio a quick recovery on the 3-day disabled list. John had what he claimed to be about a 20-year streak of health going on the line here, right?
Oh, he's devastated. He takes a lot of pride in the streak, being a Brett Favre fan, and he's devastated.
Alrighty. This segment of the Rochester Press Box brought to you by Sticky Lips Barbecue. For your banquet and fundraising needs, Sticky Lips is a place to call. All right, like it or not, Mike, Ryan Fitzpatrick's future.
I don't like it. I really don't. I mean, I'm sure there's some possibility that if they work out the contract, that everybody says, well, Fitz can be a good backup and all. What we're seeing with this organization, to me, seems like a lot of clean slate stuff, where they're coming in and going and making a change. I know it's hard to replace 3 quarterbacks. I don't think Tyler Thigpen's coming back. I really don't think Tavares Jackson is coming back. We know they're going to draft somebody, whether it's Ryan Nassib. I just think there's a time to cut him loose and let him go somewhere else. I know people say he could be a good backup, but you draft a young guy, you end up with Fitz. The young guy's not quite ready, and you tell everybody Ryan Fitzpatrick is your starter at the beginning of next year. I think that's a tough sell.
You think Minnesota might want him? Why? Joe
They
Webb.
could
When's the last time you saw
I
a worse
would say
quarterback
this.
to game?
Let me tell you something. A couple years ago, he actually came into Philly and beat the Eagles in one of the most horrific games they've ever played. It got delayed twice by snow. But the one thing for the poor guy, Joe Webb didn't see the playing field once during the whole season. And all of a sudden, he's out there playing, and he looked like a guy who hadn't been out there.
When he was being tackled and he threw that ball straight up in the air, I thought, Minnesota has no chance. I thought maybe they could make this work.
If I'm a front office guy in the Bills, I don't want Ryan Fitzpatrick on the roster because I don't want anybody thinking that might be the case where he comes in and says, oh, well, if this guy isn't ready, we'll go with Fitz for now. It's a new leaf. They want to turn the page, and that starts with, sorry, Fitz, but no more.
Still, do you think he's better than 3/4 of the backups in the league? Wouldn't you at this point?
Better than the 3/4 of the backups? Yeah, probably. But I agree. I don't want to see him as a starter next year, obviously. Yeah. And we're going to find out sometime in March whether or not he'll be back, because he does have a roster bonus due in March, and I'm pretty sure that they're probably going to cut him loose at that.
But they would have to go out and get a real veteran quarterback to play, because no matter who you draft, you don't know if that kid's going to be ready to go.
And even if he's not better, it's a different name, and that's a step up, right?
I think people are looking for change, and the Bills have been changing.
All righty, like it or not, Danny, how about Notre Dame's football future after that debacle against Alabama?
If we're talking future, I like the future. I mean, if we're talking about the game from Monday night, that was a disaster. But Brian Kelly has his program going in the right direction. I think they were actually a little bit early this year, maybe a year early. I think even the AD, Jack Swarbrick, would admit that this was a surprise season for Notre Dame. The schedule looked daunting at the start. To go undefeated during the regular season and to find a way to win. Brian Kelly's recruiting on the defensive side of the football, which is something they haven't been able to do since Lou Holtz, and that's good news for Notre Dame. Future is bright for them, but they do have some improvements to make, and clearly they're still way behind the SEC.
Yeah, who's anywhere near the SEC these days?
Well, in Alabama. I mean, let's be honest. The one downside of being a top college coach is recruiting, but it's reloading with Saban. I mean, who, as a top player, wouldn't want to go play there? Great environment. You go right to the pros. I mean, there's so many guys. It's a great thing. Though I do think in that game, if that one call goes a little differently, I think it's maybe only a 42 to... Oh, never mind. They really had... I mean, that was a bad call early, but they had...
I was trying to think where you were going with that.
No, it wouldn't have made any difference.
Like it or not, Baseball Hall of Fame without Bonds, Clemens, and Pete Rose, Brian.
I think there's two ways of looking at the Hall of Fame. One is you let those guys in because it's a Hall of Fame. It's not the hallowed ground that everyone assumes it is or pretends that it is. You let the guys in because it's a Hall of Fame. All the big baseball names are in there, and they're certainly among them. The other way you look at it is you don't let anybody in because it's the Hall of Fame, and it's supposed to be the hallowed ground. And not everybody gets to go to the Hall of Fame. You don't need to put 4 guys, 3 guys, however many guys each year into a Hall of Fame. I mean, maybe you do to drum up money to keep it going. But as far as a Hall of Fame goes, you don't need the guys.
What's worse for a Hall of Fame? To have guys that we know cheated or helped in some part to get to be that level, or to let in guys that we all know weren't Hall of Famers? They were really good players, but they weren't Hall of Famers.
Here's how I always kind of like to look at McGuire and Sosa and steroids in baseball, because that was so entertaining to watch, in sports is really just about entertainment.
Yeah.
Most people who watch it aren't really involved and interested in the competition aspect. It's about watching something entertaining. It's like an actress getting plastic surgery, using artificial enhancement to make the viewers like them more. And that's kind of, if you look at it that way, maybe you can let it slide.
Or a sportscaster, Bob Costas. No.
Wasn't the Hall of Fame like
I didn't say that out loud, did I? No.
Isn't the Hall of Fame like a museum of baseball history, though? I have trouble with the idea that, well, at least the best players I grew up watching, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, they may have used, they used. But they were still the best players of the era. They're still part of baseball history. And when you go to Cooperstown, I think that needs to be a part of the Hall of Fame.
You have to decide what you are. When you go to Cooperstown, there's that museum, and then you go where all the plaques are, and it's like a church.
Because there's a danger that the Hall of Fame becomes irrelevant after a while.
A very big danger.
By the way, I don't think McGuire, even with his numbers, is a Hall of Famer myself. It's a one-trick pony, a better version of Dave Kingman. Am I missing something here? Bad fielder, couldn't run the bases, didn't hit for average, just bashed a lot of home runs.
Yeah, that's a debate we won't have to have,
Yeah.
apparently. Unfinished business when we return.
Hi, I'm Heather, and you're watching the Rochester Press Box from McGregor's.
Looking for lunch on Wednesdays? Come on down to McGregor's at East and Alexander and take in our weekly recording from the Press Box. We'd love to see you. McGregor's features the largest draft beer selection in the area at all of our 6 locations. Beer, sports, a great meal, and the Press Box on Wednesdays. Join us at McGregor's. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box here from McGregor's downtown. Brian, Michael, Danny, Bill. Brian, unfinished business.
All right, I'm going to go back to hockey and talk a little bit about the Amerks and the Sabres and the decision they have to make. And one of the interesting things to watch is going to be TJ Brennan and what the Sabres decide to do with him. And it's a tricky situation. You might not know it if you've just been watching the Rochester Americans because he's been playing so well. You might think he's an automatic to make it on the Sabres roster, but then you look at the defensemen that the Sabres have. Myers and Ehrhoff. You have Regier, Leopold. Then you count Weber in the mix. You have Sekera, Pardy, Sulzer. You have way too many guys, and then you have TJ Brennan, who may be more valuable as a trade asset than he is on the ice for the Buffalo Sabres. I don't think his trade value is ever going to be as high as it is right now. And what the Sabres really need is someone who can put the puck in the net and another center. So if you're not going to put TJ Brennan on the ice in the NHL, if he's just going to lay around as a 7th defenseman on the roster because you don't want someone else picking him up, do what's right by him. He's been a good guy in the organization for a long time. Give him the opportunity to play on another team and use him to get what you really need, and that's someone who can put the puck in the net.
All right, Danny.
Well, I'm going to start where we started the show, and that's with Doug Marrone in Syracuse. You talked about how it was robbing Peter to pay Paul. Marrone may not want to hear this, but I think his legacy at Syracuse is going to be tied to Scott Schaefer, the next coach at Syracuse University. And the reason for that is Marrone came to Syracuse to get the program back on track, which he did. And he talked about how it was his dream job, how everything he did in life was basically set up to come back to Syracuse and become the head football coach there. Now he spent 4 years there, 25-25, which that record is basically a minor miracle when you go back and look at what Greg Robinson did the 4 years before then, going 10-37 and absolutely burying the program. Now, he got the program back on track. Now, did he get it back to where Syracuse was in the good old days? Not quite yet. I think he left a little bit early. I understand why. He got he took an NFL job, which is obviously better than the Syracuse job. But I think Syracuse fans, he may not understand this yet, because I did hear an interview where he said that Syracuse fans are happy for him. I think they're a little conflicted at this point, especially now that Nathaniel Hackett's going to the Buffalo Bills. I think his legacy is tied to Scott Schaefer. He needs Schaefer to continue this momentum and keep building the program. If Schaefer bombs out, I think Marrone's legacy takes a hit because of that.
Michael?
We're talking about Marrone, so we're talking about young quarterbacks and Ryan Nassib. And I want to go to a young quarterback who just played his first full season in the NFL, and that's RG3. We all saw him get hurt in that game in the playoffs against the Seahawks. And I keep hearing this debate of what about Mike Shanahan and letting him play in the game. I think it's a pretty simple debate. I think Mike Shanahan had every reason to get his guy ready and get him in the game. And if you saw in the beginning of the game, RG3 was pretty ready to play. But it was obvious that he got hurt. And not just from what should have been a young guy, future of your franchise, injured, vulnerable, and ended up getting severely injured in the game. But the truth was, he was bad from the second quarter on. He couldn't move, couldn't plant, couldn't throw. He was not only doing RG3 a disservice, he was doing the entire team a disservice because they had no offense and eventually cost him. This is going to cost Mike Shanahan. He already was on slippery ground before they made this major move to get RG3, and now that guy is laid up maybe for part of next year. Who knows how he comes back. Shanahan's in a lot of trouble. I think that seat got really hot in the offseason.
You know, spinning off the same kind of thing, these players, we call them gladiators, and they really are. They're out there in their 20s trying to cheat the hangman. I remember Greg McElroy trying to say that he didn't have a concussion prior to the Bills game. when he did the concussion protocol, he kept ducking it, and then they finally benched him. Well, what happens is these guys cheat the hangman in their 20s, and in the 50s they sue the hangman. And eventually, I think what's going to happen is this Robert Griffin III thing is going to be Exhibit A in the prosecution's case against the NFL in terms of they don't have a handle on the health of their players.
It's great a guy wants to play. The coach should have been the one to say, get out of the game.
Yeah, you can't leave it to the kid.
Yep.
Brian, thank you. Mike, Danny, appreciate it. We tape and record the Rochester Press Box here at McGregor's every Wednesday afternoon at 12:30. We invite you to come down here and join us. We air the show Sundays at 11 o'clock immediately following the Vision High School Sports Beat. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.